All right. Okay. Today is July 25th, 2023, and we will go over the big news of last week. Thankfully, I don't think anything has I mean, all news carries over to the present, but I don't think there have been any major updates on the issues that I have picked out to talk about today. So let's get started with a big one here. The missing babies. The missing babies. So this sounds like a very concerning headline by the Chosen Ilbo, and they have been running these stories about the missing babies for a while now. I chose not to cover them in the past couple of weeks because, well, one, I didn't really understand what was going on until I really looked into it, and I understand why these headlines are so why they're trying to like capture interest with like missing babies in the headline. We're gonna have to read into this before I get around to explaining what exactly these missing babies constitute. Because when you read it, you think, oh, is this a scandal? Did somebody kidnap and kill 249 babies? No. Um, I don't know. Well, on one hand, I don't know really a better way that they could have headlined this story. And maybe that's because it doesn't really deserve to be its own story. Here, let's get into this. A total of 249 missing babies have been found to have died, most of them from sickness, but 7 were killed, and police are investigating their parents. Again, sounds pretty outrageous. The Ministry of Health and Welfare is investigating the whereabouts of 2,123 babies whose birth was recorded in hospitals between 2015 and 2022, but who were never registered by their parents. Okay, that number, the 2123, those are the missing babies. They're not missing, it's that they weren't registered across that number of years. So like I imagine someone in government this year did some kind of audit or did some kind of investigation about, I don't know how they get this information. Maybe they looked into hospitals, or they started coming into knowledge of the information of people who were not, well, children or babies who were not officially registered. And then when they did some digging, they realized that there are this many babies that were registered by hospitals as recorded as having been born, but were not like officially registered, like given IDs and yeah, that kind of thing. So they are not missing so much as they are just not logged into government records over a 7-year period. And it's very likely that those numbers continue the further back you go, but for some reason they are limiting the scope of this investigation to the past 7-8 years. So yeah, calling them missing sounds like we're supposed to know precisely where they are, rather than the government is supposed to have their IDs registered. You could say unregistered babies? I don't know. So the original number stood at 2123, and over that period they found out that almost 250 had died, 7 were killed. But when you say like missing babies found dead, that sounds like people are investigating like one string of kidnappings and murders. It's very misleading. The ministry on Tuesday said provincial governments and the police have found that 1,025 of the unregistered babies are being raised by their parents, relatives, adopted families, or in foster care. So roughly half of them are fine and just weren't properly registered. Another 35 seem never to have existed or were stillborn and appeared in the figures due to administrative errors in hospital. Like, do they not even know the number? They never exist. I don't know. Of the remaining 814, 601 were abandoned in orphanages. Sounds, well, they make it sound bad when you say abandoned. That doesn't really, I don't know the state of Korean orphanages, so I don't know if those children are miserable or doing all right. Police are continuing to investigate parents who deny they ever had a child or claim to have given them up for adoption. I guess this is a thing that could be investigated because, you're supposed to register a born baby after they're born. Or I guess even if they're stillborn or suffer complications right away, you gotta report that too. But so like this investigation seems reasonable within the scope of government, I guess. But Chosun Ilbo is trying to make it into something it really is not. As you'll see in this follow-up opinion piece, why is there no greater uproar about death of missing babies? The Ministry of Health and Welfare on Tuesday announced that 249 out of 2123 missing or ghost babies, now they're ghost babies, have been found to have died, be it from sickness or in some cases because the parents killed them. The announcement slipped through almost unnoticed because Koreans were focused on more than 40 deaths caused by the recent torrential rains and flooding. Well, they went unnoticed because this isn't the scandal that Chosun Ilbo is framing it as. These are just individual cases of individual parents who did not register their children. And like the 200, so they said that there were, 7 that were actually killed? So that means 242 died of who knows what illnesses. I guess infant death mortality is not particularly high. I don't know the current birth. The birth rates are in the hundreds of thousands, but still, that would be like less than 0.1%. It's sad, but is it something people should be outraged about, that infants got ill and died? And like, how is that? How is that of more concern to the general populace than the deaths caused by the rain and the flooding? The flooding is stuff that the government could take extra precautions to prevent, that people could be in a better situation to avoid. These are like real threats to pretty much anyone in the country who's experiencing these downpours. And he's wondering why people aren't concerned about sick infants who were unregistered. It's bizarre framing. The fatality rate of the babies. Now this is dishonest. The fatality rate of the babies whose birth was recorded in hospitals but whose parents never registered them stands at 11.7%. That percent is the 249 out of 2123. But that's not like that's not a meaningful statistic. We're just talking about the unregistered babies. What about when you combine them to the like hundreds of thousands of registered babies and the registered deaths? I'm guessing it's far lower than 11.7%, probably. Well, it says more than 50 times higher than Korea's normal infant mortality rate at 0.24%. But this isn't a real statistic. This is just the unregistered. The parents, I'm sure most of the parents did not fail to register the infants because they got sick. I don't know. He's not making a clear case for what he's actually like pretending to be upset about. The fates of the remaining 817 babies, no, we found out over 600 are in orphanages, which are still under investigation, could push up the fatality rate even higher. No. Oh, okay, a little, because it said like 200 are unaccounted for. But Korean society seems numb to their suffering. Well, I mean, the 11.7%, the 249 aren't suffering. They're gone. It's not great, but they're not suffering. Perhaps this apparent indifference is due to the mentality of viewing babies as the possession of parents. Until the 1970s, babies were often registered 1 or 2 years after birth in Korea because 40 to 50 out of every 1,000 babies died from diseases such as typhoid. Well, if that's the precedent, like, is it really so outrageous that only like 2,000 parents didn't register the babies? I mean, he's kind of like providing evidence to support the contrary of his opinion. These attitudes were reflected in law and policies. The most glaring example is that the penalty for infanticide was much milder than for murder. I don't want to get into that. That's a long ethical discussion. The law was criticized for being antiquated, but was not revised once since it was enacted in 1953. Only now, amid the latest shocking discoveries, has it been scrapped. Well, then it was revised once? Well, does it mean there is no penalty for infanticide now? I don't know what he's actually saying. So, a rate, given these 249 deaths, a rate of 31 a year. Well, again, he's not including the registered infants who died. So it's more. I don't know how useful this 31 a year number is. But the government was completely unaware. It claims that the oversight. Well, of course they're unaware. How are they supposed to know if they weren't registered? Like, you want this guy probably does want the government to spy on people more. It claims that the oversight happened because hospitals are not required to inform the government of childbirths. Well, this isn't just one government. This is at least two administrations and possibly going into Yoon's. I guess 3, yeah. But hospitals have always kept records due to payment receipts from parents, so the information was readily available for the government to check. The indifference of civil servants is as much to blame as Korean society's perception of infants as parents' property whose rights can be disregarded. Well, like, is it indifference of civil servants? Like, they did not, I don't know what reason they had to start investigating it, and I am willing to believe that the numbers were worse in the past prior to 2015. Like, this guy's just not really making a good case for whatever, he wants people to care more. A society's level of maturity can be gauged by how it treats its weakest members. True, but that more has to do with people who lack political power and rights, and yeah, I guess infants and children lack the rights that adults have, but infants is not really a political bloc, nor are children. It's not really applied in the correct way here. Major countries require government workers to visit hospitals and verify childbirths and register them because they value infants as human beings just like adults. Infants aren't just like adults, but in terms of being living and being human, yes. But Korean society continues to remain unfazed even after the shocking news of 249 unrecorded deaths. We need to change this mentality. Well, you didn't make a very good argument for changing it. I wonder if this has to do, if this is like some kind of tacit concern for like the low birth rate. I mean, most of these deaths well, we don't know. Like, it's possible the children got sick and then the parents neglected them, or the parents did not take them to hospitals because the children were not registered. We don't know. Yeah, we don't know the exactly like why they were born in or why the parents decided to give birth to them in the first place. But maybe the writer is like, we need more children to be born. I don't know. It's not a very good article, and I hope this whole missing babies controversy is not catching on, because it's if people read into it, they'll see that it's not like that. It may be a vaguely interesting statistic, but it would be more interesting if we knew, the number of people who didn't register infants going back before 2015. Like, there's no context for how bad this actually is today. Seems like this guy could have included it and decided not to, especially since he has his 1970s stat and leaves it off there. So, yeah, if you hear about the 2,000 missing Korean babies, it's not quite right. I think most people have heard by now, because it's been international news, that there was a U.S. soldier who defected to North Korea and this is the additional context, he had been in a prison workshop in Seoul. This a report from Yonhap News. There's actually two of these. Well, the second isn't that, only the headline's important, but I'll get to that. It's a wacky story. An American soldier who recently crossed the inter-Korean border into North Korea had been in a prison workshop for 48 days after failing to pay a court fine for kicking and damaging a police patrol car in Seoul, legal sources said Thursday. I don't know what a prison workshop is. I searched it and all the results were like this article published by like every newspaper in the world. I guess he's in prison, not jail, because he was sentenced, but only for 48 days, which sounds pretty good, for kicking and damaging a police car. Like, okay, getting drunk and assuming he was drunk, getting drunk and violent, it's not good. Going after the police, he's lucky these are the Korean police and not American police. Private Travis King, stationed in South Korea, willfully crossed the inter-Korean border into North Korea without authorization, because there is almost no way to get authorization to do that, during a tour to the Joint Security Area on Tuesday, and is believed to be in North Korea's custody, according to the United Nations Command and American Defense Authorities. American media organizations reported that he had been in the process of being sent back to the United States for disciplinary action in connection with assault charges he faced in South Korea. So I guess that is in addition to like kicking and destroying the car. Legal sources here said Thursday that King, 23, received a 5 million won fine from a court in Seoul on February 8th on charges of inflicting damages on a police patrol vehicle. King, however, did not pay the fine and was eventually detained in a prison workshop for 48 days, in line with a court ruling that he be held for 1 day for each unpaid 100,000 won, the sources said. So he should gotten 50 days. Unless he paid 200,000 won. He was accused of repeatedly kicking the back door of a police patrol vehicle in Seoul's Mapo district in the wee hours of October 8th and inflicting damage that required, almost the equivalent, less, 584,000 won worth of repairs. Mapo is not, now the base is no longer in Itaewon, so this guy came from outside of Seoul, I guess. Mapo's not really a place that's known for the nightlife and partying. Well, I guess we'll find out. King was apprehended by police at that time for suspected violence at a nightclub. So I guess he was partying. He reportedly did not cooperate with police officers demanding his personal information and kicked the door of the police car while shouting foul language against Koreans and the Korean military. According to investigations, King was detained from May 24th to July 10th in a penitentiary in Cheonan, 85 kilometers south of Seoul, before being released and relocated to an American military base, doesn't say which one, for a week-long stay. He was reportedly found to have fled Incheon International Airport on Monday afternoon while in the process of boarding a flight to Dallas. Okay. Ready? Last October, he was partying in Mapo at a nightclub. He got violent, allegedly. Police came to arrest him. He started being belligerent, kicking the police car, cursing at everyone. He went to court. He was ordered to pay 5 million won. He either couldn't pay it, refused to pay it, probably couldn't pay it. He was sentenced to prison for 48 days, or a prison workshop. He served from the end of May to the beginning of July. He went to a U.S. base for a week because they were going to fly him back to be court-martialed. He went to Incheon Airport to depart. He fled the airport. That was after July 10th. So wait, he got captured July 20th, right? Or he crossed July 20th. No, this report is July 20th. Anyway, let's just say he was at the base in Cheonan. No. He was in the penitentiary at Cheonan until July 10th. Went to a base, let's say, to July 18th. Tuesday. So he crossed over July 18th. Okay. So I guess he went to Incheon July 17th. He escaped. He signed up for a tour at the JSA on July 18th. He went on the tour and he fled across the border to North Korea. Oh boy. So some people are speculating that he has some kind of mental illness, and yeah, but this kind of plan, especially to sign up for a JSA tour, that requires a little bit of long-term thinking. You're not gonna get to Incheon and be like, but what if I go on a tour tomorrow? I don't know. I don't know what exactly he was thinking, but I think there was more long-term planning involved. So that's the end of this article. And then the next article, follow-up, U.S. continues to seek safe return of service member in North Korean custody. The department spokesperson declined to comment on whether North Korea has responded to U.S. outreach, so it has not. Same stuff, blah, blah, blah. They're working together to... So the State Department spokesperson noted Wednesday that Pyongyang had not answered U.S. requests to confirm the safety of King. All I'm prepared to say today is that we have made clear to them, we have relayed messages to them that we're seeking information about his welfare and want him returned safely. So the U.S. is asking, let's say, we don't know the conditions in which he is living right now, And it's the not knowing that is deeply concerning to us, and we're trying as best as we can to get as much information as we can. At this point, he is the only one that really knows, and we haven't been able to speak with him. Of course, we are concerned about his well-being. This is not a country that is known for humane treatment of Americans, or frankly, anybody else for that matter. True. So they don't know what's going on with him. North Korea isn't saying anything. They probably will eventually. They'll probably use him as a hostage, as a negotiating piece. But yeah, North Korea is not your friend. It is not a safe haven to escape to. There is a subsection of political-minded people, mostly online. They are pejoratively known as tankies because what they identify as tends to be misleading. They often identify as leftists or as communists or as socialists, which doesn't actually express what it is they support. You have to wait until they basically praise Russia, China, or North Korea, or all three, usually all three. And they will praise them against or in criticism of almost always the U.S. They are not left-leaning. They are not communist in any meaningful way or socialist. They are authoritarians. They're basically right-wing authoritarians. The big difference is that they prefer very specific right-wing authorities and reject the U.S. and claim to reject capitalism as a result. Mostly because capitalism, China is extremely capitalist, but notionally, capitalism is not like the value held by the governments that they look up to. So these people think they probably support this guy fleeing to North Korea, thinking that it's a very smart and enviable move, but it's not, because North Korea does not care about human rights. They do not care about American human rights. They are willing to let political prisoners suffer and to use them to get information. This guy's 23 years old, which is young, but people sign up for military as young as 18. So he's the age where he would have graduated college. He has enough. I would assume he has enough experience to know a bit or to be a useful negotiating piece. Just North Korea is not your friend, and escaping there is a bad idea unless you happen to have personal contacts who are already there, which is unlikely. But don't go making personal contacts in North Korea. Just this guy is He'll be lucky if he makes it back to the U.S. safe and sound. That's all I'll say. So you ever wonder why the birth rate in Korea is so low and people don't want to raise kids and families here? That's because already South Korea ranks near bottom of OECD for work-life balance, study shows. Work-life balance is, having enough leisure time to be fine with the amount of hours you're spending at work and the effort that you're making at work. If your home life, your free life justifies that effort, and not so much in Korea. The Yoon administration's recent proposal to create a 69-hour work week raises concerns about an even worse work-life balance for Koreans. This is by the Hankyoreh, the left-leaning paper, which would care about workers' rights and conditions. 69 hours a week. So I think it's capped in general at 40 hours a week. Like a few years ago, overtime was disallowed, or like big companies had to let people leave after their 8-hour shift, and they have to be compensated for overtime. And 69 hours a week would, assuming people aren't putting in 7 days, if they are, that's 10 hours a day. Geez, if it's 5 days a week, that's, what's it? That's over 11 hours a day. It's insane. I mean, there was backlash to the reduction in work hours because some people wanted to work more, but this, raising the work week, or the maximum possible work week, will just allow employers to exploit employees more. A study has found that work-life balance in South Korea is one of the worst among OECD countries, with South Korean workers enjoying limited time agency, or the ability to independently control and allocate work and leisure time due to long work hours. Yep. According to the article, A Categorization of Time Guarantee and Work-Life Balance, authored by Gangso University social welfare professor No Hejin, and published in Health and Social Welfare Review, South Korea was categorized as a country where workers work excessively long hours and enjoy little time with family. In other words, a country where the level of work-life balance guarantee is low. The study came to this conclusion after scores based on 26 indicators in institutions related to working time and family time in 2021 for 31 OECD countries were compared. Let's see, they were divided into 4 groups. Countries where both working time and family time were highly guaranteed. Countries high in only family time oriented security. Countries high in only working time oriented security. And countries low in both. Along with the US and Greece, South Korea was classified into the 4th group. Oh, US. Yeah, US is not good. Determined to have low guarantees for both working time and family time, with workers working excessively long hours and enjoying little family time. Or let's call that free time or leisure time. Notably, South Korea was found to have the 3rd lowest of appropriate working time guarantee, in part due to its long working hours. 15 hours a year. I cannot do the math on that. Compared to other countries in the organization, in the OECD. In terms of family time, South Korea scored 0.37 points out of 1, placing 20th. Well, could be worse. This is because South Korea scored low on personal time off utilization. Yep. And income replacement rate for time off. So people aren't even compensated for the time off? Is that what that means? Even though it scored high on length of institutionally guaranteed personal time off. I guess because companies do, I think the minimum is 15 paid vacation days. So countries do guarantee that. I think it's very illegal for them to deny workers or to encourage workers not to use them. But 15 days still not that much. This demonstrates the importance of time agency, especially social conditions that allow for the reduction of working time for laborers, a guarantee of appropriate income levels that didn't threaten workers' livelihoods, even if they reduced the amount of time they worked, as well as social policies that enable workers to choose leisure time over working time, determine which group countries were categorized into. So, companies here do not offer the flexibility for people to work reduced hours, especially not if they want full benefits like healthcare. I guess some companies are like allowing for some flexibility in terms of which hours they work, or to come in an hour later, work an hour later, but the number of hours tend to be set at 40. And 40, it's still a lot. Um, you get home, especially if people commute. If they commute at least half an hour, that's another hour gone from the day. Lunch break, because they have to be near the office. So that's at least 10 hours that people are not home, not engaged in leisure activity. The commuting is not leisure time. That should be counted toward these statistics. And the lunchtime too. I mean, lunch is, it's nice to eat food when you're starving, but I don't know how much leisure it actually is. I would rather be eating lunch at home than just somewhere outside the office place. For example, countries such as Norway and Sweden ranked among the highest for work-life balance thanks to guaranteed appropriate working hours and income, which contributed to shorter working hours and longer family time. That sounds good. While the South Korean government announced its plan to restructure work hours this past March, emphasizing that it would help South Korean workers secure time agency, concerns have been raised that it may extend working hours in practice by making overtime work much more flexible. In order to guarantee work-life balance in South Korean society, efforts to guarantee appropriate working hours are desperately needed. Time inequality among workers is also widening by type of employment. According to the findings by the average amount of time spent on paid labor per day in 1999 by a wage earner was 450 minutes? Why do they divide it into minutes? The average amount of time spent on paid labor per day. Okay, per day, that's almost 8 hours? Duh. Math. No, that's more like, okay, whatever. Had greatly decreased to 341. Isn't that good? Don't use total minutes. Give me some hours. At the same time, the total amount of hours spent working per day for non-wage earners, like the self-employed or the independently employed, had only fallen from 408 to 257. Okay. So yeah, people are working fewer hours than they used to because they used to have to work weekends, and that was outlawed, and then they used to have to work overtime, and that was outlawed. But it's basically saying like non-salary workers, people who do their own business or are freelance, their working hours were reduced, but reduced at they had fewer hours in 1999, but those hours were reduced by a smaller amount. While work times have consistently gone down on account of systematic changes like the implementation of the 40-hour work week and the 52-hour maximum work week, workers on the margins or in unstable employment have not been able to reap the benefits of the reduction in work hours. So even though people work fewer hours, they're still not enjoying their leisure time. I don't know. Korea is weird like that. I mean, there are a lot of fun things people can do in the free time. There was an article I was thinking of covering last week where Chosun Ilbo wrote how people are spending like 100,000 won, which is like around $100, a little more if you factor in exchange rate, or a little less. Per year on cultural activities. $100 on cultural activities per year on average sounds very low, but that was up significantly from the last time they measured it. I guess that's like museums, and does it count for like amusement parks or plays? I'm not sure what exactly that counted for, but it seems that that's a very low number, and people would be spending a lot more on those types of things if they had more time to spend, more free time to spend. Yeah, yeah. Uh, work life balance needs to be better balanced. I mean, I think more people would be willing to have families and have more kids here if they had more time, leisure time, free time, family time to spend with their families. Seems pretty straightforward. All right, this is not this video. This is well, it's I'm not gonna watch the video. I'm just gonna read the transcript. It's not. This is not new. This is back from March. But my brother sent it to me because he said it was going around Reddit recently, and I had not heard about this, but it does not surprise me. This is from KBS News. Basically, there are a lot of I don't know if it's necessarily one kid in a class, but definitely one kid in a graduation or one kid entering a class per year or in certain regions, like not in Seoul and big cities, but basically schools are running out of students. So this is translated from Korean, so originally in Korean. So the English is not going to be natural, but as the school age population is rapidly declining, there are more than 250 schools across the country with no or only one student enrolled. Now, I don't know if that actually means a school with literally one student because schools would have multiple grades. Maybe like one class, one homeroom class. I don't know, but no matter what the interpretation of this is, it's super low. In order to protect the school, each new student is invaluable. Can these schools like survive if they just have one new student in a school year? I mean, I guess they're public schools, but well, here's the thing. The reporter went to the so-called alone entrance ceremony at a rural school. So that's the big issue, is that you live out in the countryside. I don't think there are like 5 schools and the government can go like, okay, we're shutting down 4 and everyone has to go to this one school, because the countryside, they're all spread out. Schools would be like, for some students, an hour away if some shut down. So in the video, this is a small elementary school on the outskirts of Chuncheon in Gangwon-do. Entrance ceremony decorated with colorful balloons. The only student admitted to this school this year is Kim Ji-won. So that's why they show like there are other kids, but I guess they're already enrolled, and this is the only new kid this year. That's pretty crazy. But the dream of becoming a firefighter came true. No. So, elementary school, first grader. I will study hard with my older brother and sister, become a firefighter. I don't know if this. So I assume that they're meaning like he's referring to the other kids in the school, possibly in his class. But if they're older, then they're not in his class. But I guess despite the fact that they're in different classes, that they are together for some activities because there are so few students. The number of students in the entire school has already been reduced to 6. That's an accurate translation. 6 in the entire school. So the first and second graders have to teach in one class, have to be taught in one classroom. So that explains what he's saying here. So the teacher is teaching both first and second grade at the same time. I don't know if the teacher splits, splits the lesson for first graders, second graders, or if first graders are just getting a second grade education. It is the only educational institution in Buksanmyeon, and it is the only educational institution that can only represent this area. One elementary school student entered this year. Yep. The first day of the semester started without an entrance ceremony. This is a usual thing for new students, but not in these schools. This is because there is not a single student that enrolled this year. There were rumors that there were no students, so they were being eliminated 2 or 3 years ago. It's good to have a school in the neighborhood. Let's see. 144 elementary schools in 14 metropolitan areas, excluding, is that supposed to be Seoul, do not have enrolled students. I assume that means this year. Not that they have 0 students. I guess it's possible if the declining birth rate is really caught up. More than 110 places held the alone entrance ceremony for one student. It is concentrated in rural areas. Yeah. So it's these are non-Seoul, non-Gyeonggi-do. A new school year starting as students worry about closing schools as the number of students drops sharply. That's gonna keep happening every year. I wonder, because people teaching jobs, at least government or public school teaching jobs, have long been sought after, and I wasn't under the impression that they were competitive. Maybe competitive to teach at a certain school, but not necessarily to become a teacher. But I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I assume it's gotten more competitive now. If there are no schools, or they're running out of schools because they're running out of students. Population crisis, again, something that could be fixed with bringing in more foreigners. I will harp on that again later, but I would like a follow-up to this kind of article, particularly one in English. Interesting. Hello, UBK Chemistry. I am in Korea. I am in Anyang in Gyeonggi-do. Let's see. I know I'm giving a lot of love to the Chosun Ilbo. Their article, I just like how clearly their angle or their perspective on all of these articles is expressed. And the Unification Ministry to be trimmed down. It's not, I mean, okay, might as well just jump into it. The government wants to trim down the bloated. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Chosun Ilbo they go right for it. The bloated Unification Ministry. It's not Yoon's word. Well, it might be Yoon's words, but it's also Chosun Ilbo's word choice, which has had no interaction with North Korea for years by at least 100 staff. Don't separate. Wants to trim down the bloated Unification Ministry by at least 100 staff because it has had no interaction with North Korea for years. Proper phrasing, please. The move comes after President Yoon Suk-yeol said the ministry operated like a support agency for North Korea. Now, Yoon is not favorable for, in terms of like North Korea relationships, and there's not a whole lot of relationship going on these days. I can see like why they might want to cut down this ministry, but not necessarily for the reasons given in this article. A senior government official said the Ministry of Public Administration and Safety recently came up with a plan to overhaul the Unification Ministry and bring it in line with the current state of inter-Korean relations and global diplomacy. So the Unification Ministry is a long-established branch of the administrative state that deals with North Korea or inter-Korean relations. And yeah, there's not a whole lot of inter-Korean relations going on these days. That doesn't necessarily mean that the ministry is doing nothing, but at the moment, the ministry has 616 staff, including those working in agencies it oversees, and most have nothing to do. I would like a little elaboration on that, because like I seriously doubt they're just sitting around with nothing to do. Like there are always, I'm sure like a number of them are reporting on things, a number of them are like interacting with other countries or responding. I mean, North Korea's testing missiles all the time. That is stuff that I assume the ministry would be at least addressing internationally. At least 200 work in departments that used to handle cross-border meetings and exchanges and support for the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex was shut down in 2016. Most of the staff will be moved to other government agencies, but the departments handling North Korean human rights and denuclearization efforts will apparently be bolstered. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there are things they can be doing, even if they're not currently doing them. I don't know why they're making a huge deal out of like, oh, we're gonna cut down the ministry. It just seems like kind of anti-North Korean posturing and because the left in Korean politics, Kim Dae-jung was like, he did the whole sunshine policy that opened more friendly relations at the time with North Korea. So like it's something that the left has often championed. So Yoon being anti-North Korea or anti like giving up on inter-Korean relations is also a jab at the Korean left. There is a need to correct the inefficiency of the ministry's organization, which has been run as if its main duty was still cross-border exchanges and inter-Korean dialogue, a government official said. Is that true? Because this was probably a Yoon government official, although I guess they all would be. I don't know how many, like when he takes office, how many holdovers from the previous administration there are. We will redistribute personnel so that the ministry can focus on its original function. Well, by original, what are you talking about, like 1960s? One ruling party official said cross-border exchanges and inter-Korean dialogue are unlikely to resume anytime soon, and we can't leave an organization with no work to do. Well, like, why couldn't you do something to try to encourage more dialogue? It doesn't look like Yoon is really going out of his way to encourage that. When he appointed conservative academic Kim Young-ho as the new unification minister, Yoon said, "From now on, the reunification we aim for must be based on the basic order of freedom and democracy," which I guess was always the case, "and the unification ministry must play its given role according to the Constitution." Again, always the case. Doesn't seem to be saying anything new. Critics say establishing a new purpose for the ministry must come first. Yeah, like, okay, if you say you're gonna like change it, what are you gonna try to do now? Like, don't tell us what you're gonna try not to do, or what is already not being done. Make a plan. A former high-ranking ministry official said rather than pursuing excessive staff cuts, the reorganization to focus on strengthening its role of devising policies and creating the environment for reunification. Yeah, okay. I know it's the Ministry of Unification. Unification is not going to happen. Reunification is not going to happen. Or at least not for like several generations. And over those several generations, there's got to be a whole lot of inter-Korean friendship and bonding going on. But until any of that even begins, there's not going to be any unification. That doesn't mean like the ministry is without purpose. It should be trying to engage North Korea and set up any kind of inter-Korean connections, like old relatives meeting or tourism across the border, or the industrial complex to give North Koreans industrial jobs and help train them for certain types of work. Those are good first steps. I mean, yes, North Korea is the one that shut those things down before. I think that happened before the Moon administration. But yeah, they need a new plan, not just saying, "Oh, there's no point for this ministry." You just come up with a plan. You're the president. All right. There's one more thing I wanted to discuss. So last week on one of my videos, I got a comment which was not an unfamiliar comment. I have seen comments like this before. It is a oh wait, hold on. Let me copy. Oh, well, I'll put it in front, I guess, because I'm sitting in the middle here. Okay, so last week I got a comment on one of my videos, which is a familiar comment. They did not phrase it like this, but it is exactly the same sentiment. That Korea is or should be for Koreans. This was not a Korean person expressing it, because they're basically a Nazi. People with like they're just usually white nationalists. Are there really any other kinds? I mean, they believe that there should be no ethnic mixing, that there should be no cross-cultural interaction, that melting pot societies are inherently bad, but they never have any reasons for them because there are no statistics that show that they're any worse off than any other society. And therefore, for some reason, they get mad at me for having gone to a country where I am an ethnic minority. Because that also, like, at least they're consistent to the extent that they don't want a white guy living in an Asian predominant country. There are two obvious problems with that outlook. Is that one, I come from a country which issues passports, and a passport allows a passport holder to travel to any country that accepts that passport. And the second is that I traveled to a country that accepts that passport. And when I first, not when I first came to Korea, but when I came to Korea to work, there was a company, a Korean-owned company that wanted to hire me, and they applied for a work visa for me to the Korean government, the Korean Justice Ministry that handles immigration, and immigration signed off and giving me a work visa. They wanted me in the country. The employer wanted me in the country. After a while, once they got to know me, the employees wanted me in the country. It's not controversial. This specific person said, like, aren't you, like, basically saying, like, you should feel bad that the opinions you express, your Western opinions or your leftist opinions, they go against, like, the opinions of some Korean conservatives. Basically, this person was too afraid to express their own opinion, so they're hiding behind these Korean conservatives. And my response was, no, I'm not ashamed. That's not a problem, because that's how free speech works. If they disagree, they can disagree. They do. They disagree with the Korean left all the time. And I don't necessarily agree with the Korean left. I haven't really covered any stories so far about the Korean left besides the Fukushima stuff, because, well, they're not in power right now. So they're not making most of the decisions. Yeah, that's what people do in a society that has free speech. They disagree. They don't say, like, oh, you should be afraid of disagreeing. No. I don't have a problem with expressing my opinions on these stories. And, like, here's the thing. If, like, the declining birth rate in Korea is a big issue, and it's a big issue that the population in Korea acknowledges, the government acknowledges it. It's not doing enough about it, but it is doing some things to try to encourage more births, and nominally it wants more foreign workers. But the thing is, there are three options. There is the government can introduce programs that are so, like, revolutionary that, like, people who have no kids, people who are single, all of a sudden are like, man, I want to have kids and start a family here. Koreans want to do that. That is extremely unlikely to happen. There is option 2, that they're just going to continue the current course and people are not going to have kids and the birth rate's going to get worse and worse. And so there remains option 3, bring in more foreigners who want to work and live here to offset the declining population and the workforce population. And so my opinion is, assuming that Korea wants to offset the coming population decline, they need to bring in foreign workers. It would be great if they change policies to encourage people to have families, because as a result, those policies will include making life more livable here and a better work-life balance. But I just don't think that's going to happen. That would be, yeah, I would want that to happen, but I also want them to bring in more foreigners, assuming that they want to offset this problem. If they don't want these schools to run out of students and have to close. Like, these are all sort of outcome-based positions. It's not like I desperately want to be surrounded by foreigners in Korea. I always think it's weird when I pass by a foreigner. I've been seeing more and more in Anyang, and Anyang is not, like, I used to live in Gangnam, and, like, there are foreigners all over there, especially because there's lots of hotels around there, lots of surgery clinics. But here, like, I'm not used to seeing as many foreigners, and it's often a surprise when I do. But, like, I don't want more of them. I don't not want them. I'm about, like, solving an actual issue, one that's, like, looming, and that the government can do more to deal with. Yeah, my ideals are anti-Nazi, and just on the face of it, I'm anti-Nazi. I have no problem with people choosing to live in the countries that they want to live in. I'm for freedom of movement and freedom of speech.